Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Music Theory Mondays. Thank you for joining me. We got a very special episode for you today, as always. We're dealing with multiple ways of using the tritone substitution. There are a couple videos way back, probably done about a year ago, where I did talk about the tritone substitution. I only discussed one way of using them. Today I'm going to discuss three ways of using the tritone substitution. So what is the tritone substitution? It's really hard to say this many times. We're just going to call it the tri-sub, all right? So the tri-sub is essentially, in jazz, it's where you replace a chord, typically a dominant chord, with another dominant chord that's exactly a tritone away. Now, if you're not sure what a tritone is, it's an interval of 3 whole steps away from the current interval that you're on. So if we're on G, a fifth away from G would be D, and a tritone would be a diminished fifth. So bring that D down to D flat, and you got yourself that diminished fifth, augmented fourth, devil's note, tritone, okay? That is the basis for this. The tritone itself is part of the construction of the dominant 5 chord, but then we're also pulling this chord choice out of the note that's exactly a tritone away from that dominant chord. So instead of a G7, we would play a D flat 7. And in the context of replacing the 5 chord, which is our first example, we'll do a 2-5-1 in the key of C. So we have a D minor 7 to a G7 to a C major 7. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of that G7, get it the hell out of there, and we're going to replace it with the dominant 7th chord that's a tritone away from the G7, which again, we just discussed, it's the D flat. So we're going to play a D flat 7 in place of that G7. So first we're going to play it with the tritone sub. Ready? D minor 7, tritone sub to C major 7, the 1 chord. So D minor 7, tritone sub, 1 chord C major 7. Now I'm going to play the 2 back-to-back so you can hear it. So first we'll do the regular 2-5-1, G7, back home to C. Now we'll do the tritone sub, D flat 7 to C. All right, now the question is, why would you do this, right? Obviously both sound good. The 5-1 is the more traditional way of doing this, but this is jazz, and we like to bend and flex and do everything we can to push the limits of harmony and melody. So, a couple reasons. Obviously, changing the chord but not the function allows things to be more interesting. But also, this particular example creates a downward descending chromatic bass line from the D to the D flat to the C. So it's an interesting movement for the bass player as well as the piano player. That is example 1. Let's check out example 2. All right, so tritone example number 2 is where we're going to replace the 6 chord with a tritone. So I'm going to do a 4 chord progression in the key of C. We're going to do C major to A7 to D minor 7 to G7. And then, of course, resolution back on C. One of those chords does not belong to the key of C. That is the 2nd chord played. It was the A7. The A7 is the 5 chord in the key of D major and or D minor, and it is preceding the D minor 7 chord. So this is, again, just another way to spice up your chord progressions. Start on the tonic chord, throw in a dominant chord not in the key. As long as it resolves to a chord in the key, then it's welcome to the party. And then, of course, ending on the 5, which then brings us back home. All right, what we're going to do is replace that A7. As cool as the A7 is, this is all about making things extra cool, right? This is jazz. we're fancy. All right, so we're gonna do that C major 7 is the 1 to the A7, but we're gonna replace it with the tritone sub, which is E flat 7. And again, if you're on A and you go to E, that's your 5th. Drop that E to E flat. There's your tritone. So we're gonna do C major 7 to E flat 7 to D minor 7 to G7. C major 7 to E7. I'm sorry, E flat 7. D minor 7 to G7. Alright, you get the idea. Just another example of using the tritone, replacing what would normally be the 6th chord in the key of C. It's already been altered to be a dominant chord, resolving to the D minor, but we want to be even more fancy. So we're going to replace the already out of key chord with another out of key chord as a dominant tritone. And again, the reason it works, tritone subs always resolve within a half step of their landing point, right? So back to the original, we did the first example, we did D minor 7 to D flat 7, which is just a half step away, D to D flat. Same thing here. We've got the E flat 7 to the D minor 7. So it's always that chromatic half step, and that's why movements like this work. That's the basis behind the 5 to 1, which I've done a video on in the past in the Music Theory Mondays playlist. All right, we have one more to check out. Let's see what we got here. The last example of the tritone sub is where we're going to replace the 2 chord in a 2-5-1. D minor 7 is the 2 in C, G7 is the 5, and then we're going to do a C minor 7 as the resolution point. So we're actually doing a 2-5-1 in the key of C minor, so we're not replacing D minor 7, as I said. We're replacing D minor 7 flat 5, which would also be known as the D half diminished 7. So let me do that again, all right? 2 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord, C minor. We have D minor 7 flat 5, G7, resolution to the C minor 7. All right, what we're gonna do is replace that D minor 7 flat 5 with the chord a tritone away, hence the name, and we're pulling the A flat 7, which sounds like this. All right, and that's going to resolve yet again down by a chromatic half step to G7, and then finally back to the C minor 7. So let's do that a couple times. Here we go with the original 2-5-1 in C minor, D minor 7 flat 5, G7, then we got the C minor 7. Now we'll throw in the tritone to the 5. And there you have the resolution on the 1. So there you have it, guys. 3 examples, 3 uses for the tritone sub. Subbing off the 2 chord, the 6 chord, and the 5 chord. I hope that all made sense. I'd like to thank you all for watching as always. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, buy me a coffee. All right? Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.